Hello and welcome to Story Bakes with Katie Sue. First of her name, baker of goods and eater of snacks. Today we're making a tart that answers the most important question in Westeros in the years 129 to 131 AC. Green or black? Let's head to the TV for inspiration. Blood and fire, the Targaryen words. And boy did they know how to stick to a theme. To represent their house, I'm making a dark ganache made with a smoky lapsang souchong tea. The second ganache will be made with matcha for the green that the fire burns on the high tower when they call their bannermen to war. The world of Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon is very Western European medieval, so we're using ingredients and flavors that were popular at the time, like almonds and a medieval spice mixture. There are streaks of lingonberry jam because, they're war people, and the Swiss meringue is piped to be reminiscent of the scales of a dragon egg, and then torched to toasty perfection. Now let's get to the baking. Did you know that you can make ganache with pretty much any liquid? I thought for years it could only be made with cream, but no. Today we're making some with a mixture of tea and cream. I'm adding 31 grams of lapsang souchong, very smoky black tea, to 23 grams of cream. Then I'm pouring the rest of the tea into a mug. I'm adding an obscene amount of milk, then having my first Katie snack of the day. Microwave the tea and cream mixture for about 10 seconds, and next I poured over 110 grams of dark chocolate, I'm using 72%, and let it sit for a few minutes before stirring it together into a lovely ganache. Put it into little half-sphere molds before you remember that you meant for them to be black. Pour it out, add a perhaps excessive amount of black food coloring, then portion it back into the molds. Now for the Matcha Ganache, we'll make with just cream. Heating 33 grams of cream, adding 4 grams of matcha, and then stirring it into 100 grams of white chocolate and a bit of green food coloring. I heated it for about 10 seconds in the microwave to help the chocolate melt, then as I stirred it, it started to split. The fix for this is really easy. Add a bit of hot water, about 90 to 100 degrees Fahrenheit, and stir it in. It should come back together. Pour this ganache into the molds, then the whole thing goes into the fridge to firm up while we move on to a similar component of whipped ganache. Now for a lighting change that those of us in the business we call show refer to as the sun went down and I want this to chill overnight. This process is pretty much the same as before, except I'm first soaking 3 grams of gelatin in some ice water for 10 minutes before adding it to 125 grams of hot cream. We stir to make sure the gelatin is melted, then add it to 75 grams of white chocolate. Let it sit for a few minutes and stir it together. Cover, making sure the plastic touches the surface so it doesn't form a skin, and chill it until thoroughly chilled. In my case, I'm leaving it in the fridge overnight. The next day, whip it until it's light and fluffy, then swirl in some red jam of your choice. I'm using lingonberry because that's what I had in the fridge. This tart crust is the same recipe as for the Penelope tart in my last video, so I won't go into as much detail here. We're just swapping out a portion of the flour for black cocoa. The recipe is in the description below. I'm freezing half of the dough to use for some as of yet unplanned bake in the future, doing a little baking magic, and then baking them for 20 minutes at 335 degrees Fahrenheit. Let them cool for a few minutes or until you can remove the rings without burning yourself. Now they're all ready for the Frangipane. Now we're going to make the medieval spice mix, POUDRE FORTE. The spices used and quantities of each varied from person to person, but with permission, I'm using the one from the first official Game of Thrones cookbook, A Feast of Ice and Fire, by Chelsea Monroe-Cassel and Sarian Lehrer. If either of you ever see this, please let me know if I mispronounced your names. A link to buy this book and other books and cookbooks featured on the channel is in the description box below. I'm mixing 1 teaspoon each of cinnamon, black pepper, mace, which is similar to nutmeg, ginger, cloves, and long pepper, which was very popular in ancient and medieval Europe, but is now mostly found in some Asian and African cuisines. And there you have it, your very own medieval spice blend. Let's start the Frangipane by beating together 150 grams of softened butter and 100 grams of sugar until light and fluffy. Beat in 3 room temperature eggs one at a time, then add 1 teaspoon of almond extract. Stir together 150 grams of almond flour, 1 teaspoon of the POUDRE FORTE, add the dry ingredients to the wet, and mix. Now pipe the Frangipane. Oh no. Switch to a sturdier piping bag, fill them almost all the way, then they go back into the oven for about 30 to 35 minutes or until browned. Then we're setting them aside to cool completely. For the final component, we're making a Swiss meringue, again like in the Penelope video, because I want to cook the egg whites as we're just going to torch this later, not fully cook it. 3 egg whites, 135 grams of sugar, and a 1/4 teaspoon cream of tartar are heated over a pot of simmering water until it reaches 165 degrees Fahrenheit. Then we whip it to stiff peaks and add just a touch of black food coloring. And we're ready to assemble the tarts. All right, let's put it all together. It's fine. Place the ganache filling in the center of each tart. I have 6 tarts, so I'm doing 3 green and 3 black. The green ganache didn't firm up enough to get it out of the mold in one piece, so I'm using a small scooper to make some half spheres. Oh no, there's extra ganache. Whatever will I do? It'll be difficult, but I'm sure I'll manage somehow. Now after you're done being dramatic, add the whipped ganache. I'm using a scooper here, then using an offset spatula to even it out. These go into the freezer for a quick chill while I set up my Swiss meringue with a Wilton 2A tip. I'm going for a dragon egg-esque look here, piping downward to get the pointed scales of the dragon eggs. They're a little spikier than a real dragon egg, but I like it because it seems dangerous. And now for the fire. Get out your kitchen torch and here we go. All right, hold on. Dracarys. When the meringue is toasted as much as you like, you're all set. I got this dagger to cut into the tarts with. It's not specifically Game of Thrones, but that just means I can use it for future fantasy-themed bakes like Lord of the Rings or ACOTAR or The Witcher. It's a prop so the edge isn't sharp, but hopefully it's thin enough to get a clean cut here. It isn't. I'll have to look into sharpening it. So here we go. Let's find out whose side we're on. Green or black? Is this a side that wins? I've only read most of Fire and Blood. It's interesting because the whole A Song of Ice and Fire world is, but it is written kind of like a history text, and I admittedly read it when I'm having trouble falling asleep. I thought that the smokiness of the lapsang souchong might not come through with the dark chocolate, but it's definitely there. I err on the side of components not being too sweet, but you could add a bit more sugar to the tart crust and more white chocolate to the whipped ganache if you like things sweeter. The torched Swiss meringue is basically like a toasted marshmallow. You can't go wrong. You thought I forgot about the snacks, but please, of course I didn't. Here I have all of my leftovers. We're taking the Frangipane and, oh, would you look at that? Some of it's already missing. I'm going to use it like bread for a sandwich, spread on some of the whipped ganache and some of the Matcha Ganache, add some tart crust pieces, and we have an excellent snack. Hit the like button if you want to see more House of the Dragon, Game of Thrones bakes, subscribe and hit the notification bell if you're so inclined, and let me know in the comments what characters, shows, or movies I should turn into bakes next. Thanks for watching!